we want to distribute that material so that we have that thickness, that weight at the bottom, so that once this piece is made, it stands up without tipping over. So you saw that they just use a little bit of her own breath blowing through the pipe, but we also have an inflation system. So she puts this tube on, and that tube is connected to a pedal. So we can press the foot pedal, it activates compressed air. That air will flow through the tube, through the pipe, and into the glass. And this is great because it means that the day can be shaping that material while inflating, instead of doing a little bit of shaping and then a little bit of inflating, or telling me when to blow through the pipe. That gives me the ability to talk to all of you. But this is how really we learn to blow glass, is we learn to blow glass and work in teams like this. And most of the time when we learn to blow glass in teams like this, they would tell me when to blow. And I would crouch down here, and I would blow through the pipe. And then she'd maybe say, maybe more air, or maybe less air. And when to stop. So this way, the day can do all of that on her own. Sure, yeah. I say torched up there just a tiny bit. Yeah, perfect. You're welcome. So, we're getting ready for the next move. And the next move is to start creating constriction just off the end of the pipe. And that constriction is going to be a designated breaking point. So it's going to be a line or a crease that we make in the glass. It's going to be an area that we can basically break. It's like a thin line in a chocolate bar. So, I'm going to take a heat. And Dave's going to be creating that constriction in that material. It should be okay at least. But we're going to hold this pipe down at an angle so the glass starts to stretch and elongate. So this is a very quick and efficient way to make a taller form. But we want to build a little bit of heat into this top section, so we use that torch so that we can build a little bit of temperature up so that we can really control where this glass is stretching from. So I'll hold this at an angle. She'll start that constriction. Every once in a while, tapping on that pedal. That's the other nice thing, is that we can be stretching this and inflating at the same time. And creating that constriction, so we're really getting a lot done in one big move. And she's just using some hand signals, and that's how I'm understanding how I need to hold the pipe. Sure, there you go. I'll get another door for you. So when we increase the scale and we increase the complexity of the pieces that we make, we'll increase the size of the team. So I think a little bit later on in the process, our flame worker, Rob, he's doing another demonstration in the museum. He'll probably pop down here and join us as well a little bit later on in the process. That'll help us out a lot. Yesterday we made a really big bowl. It's not quite big enough that I can take a bath in it, but it's a really big bowl. And there were, I think, 4 of us working on that really large bowl that we made yesterday. And that's nice because once we start making larger objects, we start to open up the doors on the reheating furnace, and we start being close to glass. And all of this glass while we work is over 1,000 degrees, and it's emitting all of this heat off the surface of the glass. So as things get bigger, you have more surface area blasting you with all of this heat. So we'll sometimes put on a fabric sleeve called Nomex. And Nomex is like what lines firefighting suits or race car driver suits. And it's a fire-resistant material. And I like to wear that on my arm because I'm very sensitive, very fair complected. So when I shape glass, it looks like, even if I make something small, like a little wine glass, it looks like I have a sunburn on just one part of my arm. The day is much tougher than me. I would never think of making something this big without wearing a sleeve to protect myself. But some of the glass makers that work here, they don't ever wear sleeves. So some heat and a stretch. So before I took that heat, just with a little hand gesture, Day showed me where she wanted the glass heated. so that I knew how deep to have the glass inside of the furnace. So they just picked us up and said, oh, now it's lighter. And it's not that it's actually lighter, it's just that it's moving less than before when it was really moving around. So it does start to feel a little bit lighter. It's not moving around as much, and that's really nice. The other thing that will happen is when we start working on the top of this bottle, we'll break it off of the blowpipe, and when we break it off of the blowpipe, it will get lighter as well, because there is some glass up on the pipe that will shed, that will lose. And that's just the glass that's connecting it to the end. So some heat, and now we're really going to start to stretch this out. We've got plenty of material. Oh, sure. You're welcome. Is this a good spot? Okay. So we first start just using gravity, holding that pipe towards the ground, letting that gravity stretch and elongate the glass at an angle. But Dave said, can you give me a stool? Can you give me a box? I'm too short. She's going to swing this glass back and forth. So we can first use gravity, but then we can also use a little bit of centrifugal force to stretch and elongate this, swinging it back and forth to help make it even taller. I like making tall stuff. That's one of the advantages. Is I'm kind of tall, so I can make tall things. I've got really long arms. So when I sit at the bench, I can reach tall things. Sure. Yeah. So Dave's what we call the gaffer. And that means she's in charge. So she's the designer of this piece. She's the leader of the team. So she tells me what she needs, and then I do what I can to help out. So she said, just preheat. We're going to even this out. Sorry. If you're in control, I'm just holding it back. So a lot of the communicating we do is actually fairly non-verbal. So I didn't mention it earlier, she's just using some hand signals as far as the angle of the pipe and where to heat, those kinds of things. And it's because we both know pretty much, we know the steps, we know the process of glass making. So we don't have to communicate with words too much. We can talk about the plan beforehand and then figure it all out. So we're going to now take this out of the round. So if you've been to any demonstrations earlier today, Dave's been practicing this. Basically figuring out how we were going to go about this piece. So we're going to squish and flatten this glass. We're going to use some cork paddles. The cork is a really soft material on our glass. We can use it to flatten this. We're going to flatten this into two sides. So I'll take a heat, and you just tell me when to stop. Dave's watching this fall towards the ground, telling me when to flip. And actually, only tells me when to flip initially. Now I just know when to flip when she stops shaping. So I flip it over, she's corking it, flattening it. And one of the keys here is that I am keeping my finger over the end of the pipe. We don't have any valves in our pipe, so by holding my finger over the end, I'm maintaining the pressure in this glass so we don't completely collapse and flatten it. Are you corking it more, or? Yeah. I mentioned earlier that usually when we use the corks, that's one of the really signature smells in the glass studio. There's a lot of different smells that take place in the glass studio. We burn up all these different wooden tools, we use the wooden paddles, we use the newspaper, but the quarter pipe is kind of a sweet bonfire smell. So a lot of times, when you leave the glass studio, because of all these wood materials, they smell a little bit like a bonfire. But I like the smell of bonfire, so that's not so bad. But we're heating just the very bottom now. They use the torch to heat very specifically. That torch is oxygen and propane. So we can heat one really specific spot on the bottom of the vessel. And then with the brief heat at the furnace, kind of even that temperature in through the vessel. A little air. So we flatten the vessel now. Now we're ready to work on the top. So we're going to break this glass from the blowpipe. And what kind of punty would you like? Maybe this medium-sized counterweight? Okay. So let's talk about this, the medium-sized counterweight. These are different sizes of, this is a solid steel rod. So we can't blow through this one, but we call this the punty. Punty is a temporary handle, so this is what we'll catch the piece with when we break it off with the blowpipe, so that we can work on the top of our bottle. So I'm going to shape this out. I need to cool the glass, so I've shaped it on our steel table. So this is going to cool that material so that it sets up and stabilizes a bit. And then we'll attach it to the center of the bottom of the bottle. So today's using that torch just to balance out the temperatures, make sure everything is nice and even in heat. We are going to break this glass. We're going to break it by relying on thermal stress. Thermal stress happens when we rapidly heat or rapidly cool glass in a certain area. And we're going to rapidly cool the glass of that constriction that she made earlier. So when we put a couple drops of water, we'll chill that glass really quickly. And we'll get all these little fractures, and then we can hit the pipe, and the vibration will break it free. And we'll catch it on this punty that I've just made. So we have different size punties, I was mentioning this before, for different size objects that we want to make. This one's actually weighted on the back side, so that helps balance out those temperatures, or the weight of the vessel on the end of the rod. It's pretty good. Yeah. So we'll let this set up. They nailed it. Bullseye there. So we'll let this punty set up a bit. Just torching the top, making sure that the temperatures are all good throughout. That'll be alright. Yeah. Now we'll break this off of the blowpipe. So a couple drips of water, that's that thermal stress. And then a big tap of the pipe. These breaks right off. Get right back to the furnace, so we can keep heating and shaping the top section. But I say we give today a big round of applause. Smooth, successful transfer there. And now we can shape the top. So this is going to take a few moments, and then we'll get back into the additional decoration. There'll be some more parts that we add on to this. But this is a good time for questions. If you're curious about anything.
I just want a clarification. Are you saying that that one adds glass to it, but the other just heats it?
Exactly, yeah. So the furnace in the center, that's the melting furnace. It's full of glass. This reheating furnace is just a big barrel of heat, so there's no glass in there. Because of this, the melting furnace, that stays on all the time, 24/7. The last furnace we replaced, this is new, we started this one in March, but the previous furnace had been on for 8 years straight, which is pretty impressive. But yeah, the reheating furnace, we'll turn that off at night. So as soon as we finish this demonstration, we turn it off. It takes about an hour, hour and a half to warm up in the morning. Yes? Yeah, what do we start out with? In the furnace? Yeah? Yeah, so it's just molten glass in inside of the furnace. And then as it cools, it gets harder. Yeah, so that was in this furnace here. So this furnace is what holds all of the molten glass. So basically, from here down, there's a big ceramic bowl that holds 1,000 pounds of glass. So yeah, but it's all in there.
Colored rods that we use to color the glass, is that also made of glass?
Yeah, so the color rods that we use to color our glass, it is also made of glass. So our glass, our clear glass, is called soda lime glass, and it's the most common kind of glass in the world. So the recipe is silica, soda ash, and limestone. So silica, that's just sand. Soda ash is a flux that lowers the melting point of our glass, and then the limestone stabilizes that recipe. And this is a very common type of glass. It's the most common kind of glass in the world. So bottles, windows, jars, it's all soda lime glass. But you can change the ratio of those ingredients, and that changes the working properties. So our glass is formulated specifically for glass blowing. So windows, bottles, and jars, it's all soda lime glass, but it has a different working property than our glass. So our glass is designed to stay hot for a long time, so we can really work and shape it. So the color company, the company that makes our glass colors, we get them from a place in Germany. They start out with that same clear glass recipe, but then they add different metal oxides and chlorides, different elements from the periodic table, and that's what makes the different colors. So green glass is typically made with iron oxide, so it's basically rust. So that's a fairly inexpensive color. When I say inexpensive, I mean 1 kilo of glass, of green glass, so this is basically a kilo of green glass is 2 pounds. This is probably $30, $35. The same amount of pink glass is probably closer to $95 because that glass is made of gold. Gold chloride makes pink glass. But yeah, we're very lucky that we can just buy it. That company's been making glass color for over 200 years. So incredible amounts of experience making glass color. So we just buy it. And we know that it's going to be consistent all the time. So we can make our own glass. We can melt our own colors. It's a lot of science, it's a lot of chemistry. We do have a small furnace on the side of the stage there that holds about 100 pounds of glass. And it has a beautiful light blue in it. We call it copper blue. Because, well, what metal do you think makes copper blue? Copper. We call it copper blue, but that's this blue here. So we have a furnace full of that, which is why you see several blue things, because it's real nice color. But it's fun to make things with colored glass. And we'll do that. We'll melt color in that glass, or in that furnace when we need to make a whole bunch of one thing that we want it to be a specific color. Okay. So we have a line of Christmas ornaments, or holiday ornaments, and we, the order always starts out with 200 from the shop, and then we always end up making way more than 200. So we start now, so that by the time the holidays roll around, they're already done. But I'd say we use it 10% of the time for those specific pieces that we have to make, and then way more of the time because we really like that color and we just want to make things out of that fancy color. Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, thank you. No, you're good. So Dave's just cut some glass off the top, and we cut glass off usually because we want to thin it and refine that top edge. Where we break glass from the blowpipe, it doesn't typically break perfectly even and perfectly straight. And also, right next to the pipe, that glass tends to be fairly thick. And that's just because the pipe is stealing away some of the heat, so that glass is not as hot and it doesn't get as thin. So we can stretch it with tweezers and we cut off some of that excess material, and we can finish up refining the top. So she cut that glass off. It hit the floor. By the time it hits the floor, it's already pretty solid. And now we can finish straightening up this top section. Sure. Yeah. So every once in a while, you see a Dave using that torch on that back section, on that puntee connection. That puntee connection is maybe the size of a nickel, and it's designed to fail. We put it on at a cool temperature so that hopefully it does break off at the end of this process. So we want to maintain the temperature. We can't let it get too cold. Otherwise it might fall off before we're ready for it to. So we use that torch just to balance out the temperature. Just like before, we were building the heat in one area, we're doing the same thing here. And that's because when we get to the reheating furnace, that puntee is the last thing into the furnace, it's the first thing out of the furnace. So we just add a little bit of heat in the torch. Now you'll also notice that Dave puts the entire vessel into the reheating furnace to maintain the temperature at that connection, but then also focuses the heat on the top, just the part that she wants to change. So you can really see the difference in the, from the top to the bottom of that color, or that orange glow. But we're going to do the same thing we did before. Use the corks to start to flatten out the top of the vessel. So we have a nice flattened shape. Sure. So you'll also notice how gently we move this pipe and set it down at the rails of the bench and at the yoke in front of the furnace, because we don't want that to fall off. All right. Let's need some shears. So now we're going to add a couple things to this piece. By a couple things, I mean a face. Dave has this cool mold. This is a graphite mold. So we're going to fill this with glass, and then this glass is going to get stuck onto the side of the vase. So I'm going to get some glass out of the furnace, and I've never done this before. I've never used this mold, so find out how much glass it needs. What do you think, double dip? I'll do a double dip. So double dip is when we start by getting some glass, not a ton. We get some glass, and I'll let this just cool down a little bit, and then I'll have more surface area, just like today when she got the gathers for the vessel. So I'll go back and I'll get more, and then I'll come over and I'm just going to let this drip off and flow into the mold. And hopefully it's the correct amount. And if it's not, no problem. We'll recycle that clear glass back into our furnace. You know, I had a whole bunch and I stripped it off. Yeah, this should be plenty. Oh yeah, that's plenty. Oh, maybe not. Oh, actually, it's about perfect. Oh, thanks. So where I cut this, I'm going to torch it. Are you just going to go right on the side of that? All right. Look at that. That's fun. Cool.
Woohoo! Yeah!
Are we going to do another one of those? Or just the one? Oh, she said we should do a crowd vote. What do you think? Should we do a face on the other side or just the one side? If you say one side, raise a hand.
Stand up just on one side.
All right, that's 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, 2 sides. I think 2 sides. All right. So we'll do 2 sides. You're making more work for me. That's what's happening. That's all right. All right. So, Dave, can I go for it? We get some more glass here. Okay. Place that down here on the other side. Oh, look at that. Lining up really well, too.
Oh, yeah.
Today, is it heavier? Is it heavier? Way heavier. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. So she says she's ready to box it. So she's finished. She's ready to cool this down. All the things that we make have to be slowly cooled. It's a process called annealing, and that relieves the stress and the strain in this glass. We just let this sit out in the open air. As it cools, it will shrink and contract. I mentioned this, and that glass will crack and break. But where we have these big variations in thickness, that glass is going to cool at drastically different rates. So that thick area has more thermal mass. It's going to cool much slower than the thin areas. So we will put this in an oven that's 965 degrees. While the annealer will anneal the glass, will slowly cool it down to room temperature. So I've got my gloves on. These are the same material as firefighting gloves. Got my face shield on, so when I put my face close to our 1,000 degree oven, I don't lose my eyebrows. Does it sound like I'm in a bucket? Maybe not so much. Sure. You're welcome. So today is just balancing out the temperature again, letting those big, thick parts cool down while we warm up that punty connection a little bit. So we'll break this off. After we break this off, we'll fire polish the bottom. So we'll use another torch, an oxygen propane torch that burns close to 4,000 degrees. And we'll remove any potential sharp spots that are left behind on this punty, or where we break the punty free. So today I'm going to grab it on the sides, so that I'm not the face sides. Yep, okay. So she'll get some water on here, and I just want to grab those face sides, which are still hot. Yep. Alright, so it breaks off really well. Use that torch to fire polish. Rob's got here just in time to get the door for me. Thanks, Rob. There's one last look. Our beautiful vessel. There we go, safe and sound. We'll see that again tomorrow after we slowly cool it. What a wonderful job. Yeah, let's give it a